Hello and welcome to my 10-minute video presentation regarding my advanced performance recital. In this brief video, I would like to outline two main areas of interest regarding my performance. The first of these being the programming, specifically the songs themselves and how these can be sequenced in a way that isn't going to disrupt the theme of the program. And secondly, two performing technicalities, one regarding the guitar and the other regarding the vocals. For the guitar, I'd like to talk about alternative picking styles and how these can be judiciously selected for the different songs and genres of music that I will be playing in my performance. And regarding the vocals, I'd like to talk about head and chest voices, specifically how I can transition between these for different songs that call for different pitching in different registers. I wanted to make sure that the songs I'd chosen and the order in which I'd placed them was going to make kind of programmatic sense and not be too jarring when the songs were different in mood or lyrical content or the type of relationship that they had. So I went about having a criteria for each song and then assessing its different qualities and then eventually seeing how they could best fit together, because each song is quite different, be it musically, thematically, etc. So the first criteria I had to establish was, is this song a cover or an original? So as you can see, those highlighted in yellow are the covers and those which aren't highlighted are the originals. Having done that, I moved on to stage 2 of the criteria, which is to try and address what type of relationship the song was talking about. Be this a romantic relationship, a friendship, or is it not really made pretty evident as to which relationship in particular the song is talking about? And then finally, judging them on a combination of their lyrical and musical components, I went about trying to establish the mood and the feelings that each song put forward. So would this be a happy, optimistic feeling, or one of anger and frustration? And upon establishing all three of these criteria, I then went about deciding on my final order of performance. So as you can see, we have a nice optimistic song from 1 through to about song 4 before we have a kind of drastic change in mood with a more languid ballad, and this is then turned on its head at track 5 with something more happy and optimistic, and this feeling of optimism kind of deteriorates slowly until we get to track 8, which is a kind of wholesome, sorrowful song to conclude the set. And it's important to mention that Sometimes It Snows in April on Prince's album Parade also concluded that. So I feel this is probably the best song to go about finishing a set with. Now, regarding my picking techniques that I mentioned in the introduction of this video, I want to demonstrate how I adopted an appropriate picking style, or rather finger picking style in this case, for the song Sometimes It Snows in April. And I've mentioned this in my program, this song. And this song in particular uses this opening 1-2-5 progression, which can be heard in the introduction and in the verses. And it sounds a little something like this. So as you can hear, it's a very kind of warm, rounded tone, and it flows into different sections together. The strings are all very resonant. Hear that top B and E ringing over each other. So when it came to learning this song, obviously I came to discover it has an arpeggiated style of playing. Naturally, I adopt this hybrid picking technique that I've used extensively throughout my personal playing approach. Now, hybrid picking involves picking with the first 2 fingers, or finger and thumb I should say, and then finger picking as you would do with the remaining 3. Now, when we put it in the context of this song, it doesn't really sound brilliant, because you have this now, as you can hear, it's got that kind of attack, metallic-like quality that doesn't really lend itself to this style of song. We don't really want it as bright, and we don't want the emphasis on the pick more so than the fingers. And I must say this is particularly obvious in my case, just because I don't have very long fingernails. So in order to combat this, I did away with the pick, became more dexterous in my thumb, and learnt to do the traditional finger picking approach. And something else that benefits from this approach is I have a more kind of limp-wristed style, which allows me to play further up the neck, similarly making it rounder and warmer in sound, as opposed to the more flat-wristed approach, which gives that twang quality which we're really trying to avoid for this song. And on a final note, one other benefit that came with adopting this wrist position and finger picking style is this song has plenty of harmonics in, like the. Now if I adopt a limp-wristed approach to this, it becomes much easier for those harmonics to sing over the top, and then I can then revert back to the original phrase. Whereas if I hybrid pick, it's a lot more difficult to do that because I need to keep this pick still and then pluck with the other two, or optionally try and do it with a pick, and it doesn't really sound as good. It's more muted, and also you have that more attack approach, whereas we want it to be balanced across the rest of the picking. So that is how I developed the appropriate picking style and the appropriate neck positioning to play Sometimes It Snows in April. Now, regarding the vocal, there are two specific techniques that I want to cover today. One of which being the register for the Prince tune that I already mentioned, Sometimes It Snows in April, and how I can go about transitioning between the head voice and the chest voice effectively. And the other one being to do with the choice of pitching. For my own composition, it never would have worked out anyway, and why in the end I thought that playing it in B flat was the best choice, one, for coordinating my fingers, and two, being nice to my voice. Now, the first point of interest I want to mention regarding the vocals goes back to the song Sometimes It Snows in April, rather than the guitar. We're focusing on the voice today. Now, in the case of Prince has an extensive tenor vocal range that could go as high as a C7 and all the way down to a low F2. Now, this extensive, roughly 4-octave vocal range meant that he didn't really need to worry about pitching and register regarding his voice because he could cover most bases when it came to singing. In my case, however, I have a rather limited bassy baritone vocal range, and as a result I had to manipulate the way I sing in order to combat this song. For instance, there's a certain point in the second chorus where he sings a high B above the tonic chord of E. Now, having this high fifth in his singing, if I was to try and sing that note through my chest voice, as you can hear, I'm not really pitching it properly, and there's a lot of strain going through my jaw and my vocal cords. So in order to combat this, I thought I'd try singing in a falsetto head voice to go, I used to cry for Tracy, I wanted to see him again. And as you can hear, going to the head voice, not only am I able to pitch the note better, I'm also able to sing with what I feel is a bit more of a kind of sorrowful texture, if you will. And similarly, another point of interest is transitioning then back to the head voice. And I decided to do this on Trey, the syllable Trey of Tracy, because this note is probably the highest I can go within my chest voice register, if you will. So it's a good one to then come back in, and it gives it that little more kind of forcefulness. So if we hear it in context, it would sound like, I used to cry for Tracy, I wanted to see him again. Notice how I do the same thing with C, because that's the same note. The second point I want to make regarding the vocals is for my own composition entitled It Never Would Have Worked Out Anyway. Now, for this song in particular, the vocals are very definitely playing second fiddle to the complicated technical guitar part and also the witty, zany lyrics of the song. So, For me, when deciding on the appropriate key to play the song in, it had to be something that was going to strike a balance between being conducive to my fingers still being able to pull off the technical harping runs and pull-offs and various other guitar idioms, and then at the same time not being too strenuous on my voice so that I could still sing it properly without having to devote too much kind of active concentration to the vocals, because I'd say about 90% of that really needs to be going to delivering the guitar part. This is why ultimately I decided on the original key of B flat, because to me this key was the best to strike a balance between the guitar and the complicatedness of that, and also the vocals. Here's a quick snippet to demonstrate what I mean. Oh, lighten up. Where's your sense of humour? They're just tiny little rumours that have started, 'cause I'm looking out for you.